Good morning. Many thanks for joining the webinar today. For those of you that don't know me, my name's Richard Bates. I'm a Sales Director for EBS, and we pride ourselves on being your experienced technology partner. For those of you that don't know EBS, we've been established for over 40 years. We're a long-standing Sage partner and spent over 30 years reselling Sage 50 and Sage 200 in various forms. We're also a Microsoft partner, IT managed services provider, and we have our own EBS cloud offering as well, which is obviously perfect for Sage 200. But more importantly, today we're launching the EBS and Phocas partnership, and Phocas are introducing their financial statements, budgets and forecasting module, and we want to obviously share this with you today. So before I pass over to Daniel from Phocas, just quickly let you know we are obviously recording this session. It will be put onto YouTube, so if you want to turn your cameras off, you're more than welcome to. If you've got any questions, feel free to pop them in the chat as we go through, and we'll open up to questions at the end as well if you want to unmute yourself. I don't think I've missed anything, so I'll stop there and pass you over to Daniel, who will lead you through what Phocas do and how it can benefit your business.
Thank you, Richard. I want to introduce and welcome everyone this morning. Thank you for taking the time out to join us. This is one of our first webinars with EBS. It's a relatively new partnership, but really excited about what this brings to us. And Phocas, if you don't know us, we've been in operation for about 20 years now, and we make people feel really good about their data. So what we'll do is go through a brief presentation, and then we're going to go into the actual products and show you the technology, how it works, and how it's going to empower your business. So I'm just going to turn my camera off. There we go. And now we can move on to the next slide, please, Johnny. So we are Phocas, and from our origins as a BI platform, we've now extended our solutions to cover business planning and analytics to offer a suite of data management solutions. There are over 2,900 manufacturers, distributors, and retailers globally, with over 35,000 users empowered across their business with user-friendly and ad hoc analysis, performance tracking, visual reporting for enhanced decision-making company-wide. And what we do is we eliminate the common data challenges by providing a really quick to implement, engaging solution that adds value immediately. And it's whether it's growing sales, optimizing your stock, streamlining your purchasing, or delving into the financial heartbeat of your business. We enable people to lead by providing direction and keep teams focused on the goals with actionable insights to support key performance areas, to plan by making quick strategic decisions about the business based on the clear goals and plans and collaboration, and then equally to sell, so gaining real value from the data, customized to the needs of your business without having hours of manual setup. It's really simple and easy to use for the end user. So today we're focusing on our financial statements module, and that delivers efficiencies and improved reporting to the finance team and the business more broadly. The data from the ERP in Sage in this scenario is fed directly into Phocas financial statements, leaving the ERP data intact, ensuring integrity whilst offering a user-friendly interface for faster reporting and resolution on the numbers that drive the business. That results in finance time being freed up to analyze the results rather than preparing the results. And if you think about your operation currently, how much time is spent collecting the data, putting it into Excel or various other formats before you even have the opportunity to see what it means. We increase accuracy and value add, and the data is not just locked to finance. It gives you the ability to share with other departments and have ownership of their numbers. We will also cover Phocas budgeting and forecasting, which seamlessly integrates in with Phocas financial statements and Phocas analytics, and that will give you company-wide financial planning, analysis and reporting, all in that one single platform. We are a cloud-based subscription product with pre-built content and integrations to over 30 other data sources and connections to over 300 more. So it doesn't matter where your data is, we've got the ability to extract it and present it in the way that you wish to use it. So how does it work? So as I mentioned, it doesn't matter what the data source is, and we're focusing on Sage predominantly today, but we've got the ability to extract it and pull it in from other sources. We then have a pre-built solution, which includes financial, purchasing, inventory and sales data with pre-configured dashboards and alerts, making it really simple and easy to deploy. Phocas sits on top of that information. And as I said, it's fully managed as a SaaS platform, allowing you to interrogate, analyze and configure the data safely away from the origin source, reducing the risk. And security is paramount to us. We are hosted in AWS and fully supported by an award-winning security company, Rackspace. And as you can see on the core product there with Phocas, we've got a series of other different modules which we will be covering over the course of subsequent webinars. We build the data from the transaction level up. Sage is the primary source for today's data, but as you can see, other data sources can be pulled through. Equally, we allow you to pull through spreadsheets and text files into that system. It's then processed and accessible on all devices, and it meets the needs of a post-COVID world. So it doesn't matter if you're a CFO sitting on the beach in Bali or sitting in your office, you've got access to that data and been able to make those important insights that the business needs. Our solution is made up of 3 different layers. And it may be that you start out and spend most of your time in the visualizations, or you want to follow your nose and delve into the data that's making up that information. You can click directly through from those visualizations into the analysis layers, which we've referred to as the grid. And equally, there is a 3rd layer which enables you to configure the databases, pull further information in from other sources, and ensure that it's cut and displayed in the way that you wish to use it. With those visualizations, they can be passed on to other departments or other individuals across the business, or equally sent out to your customers. And it's a really good way to be able to improve individual team performance with live tracking, chart or graph findings, and share with others. And it's really easy and intuitive to use. Within the analysis is where the magic happens, and you can follow your train of thought. It's really designed to fit your specific industries as well. So it doesn't matter whether you're currently working in wholesale distribution or you're looking at manufacturing, we've got a solution which will help you to be able to identify the information you're looking to gain access into. And it's designed for typical role-based KPIs. The benefit means that it's going to give you that one version of truth company-wide. So there's no more shared data sets. There's no more shared Excel spreadsheets and various different versions that you just don't know which one the current one you're working on is. There's no set drill paths and CAM reports, and you can slice and dice to suit you. And the best thing is you can't break it and you can't corrupt the data underneath. And within that database designer, I'll just touch on that as well. So it's fully customizable. You don't have to have Phocas do any of the work to be able to support you on that. But of course, we are there to help and assist should you need us. And you can customize it to perfectly match your needs, and drag and drop functionality makes it really simple and easy to use. You don't have to be an IT wizard to be able to understand it. So are you or your finance team spending too much time collecting data and not enough time on strategy? Well, you're not alone, and there's only so many hours in the day, and finance professionals know better than anyone else how time-consuming, error-prone and cumbersome manual data entries can be. And whilst the role that finance professionals play is crucial, not all of the work they're doing adds the same value. According to McKinsey's report, reducing data costs without jeopardizing growth, up to 40% of daily business reports add very little to no value to the organization. And if the organization provides employees with self-service business intelligence capabilities, it'll be easier for employees to track KPIs, and these wasted efforts could be dramatically reduced. There's also a finance effectiveness benchmark report back in 2017 conducted by PwC that found that top performers operate at a lower cost, not by reducing service levels, but by standardizing and simplifying their core business processes and systems. And that enables them to free up the resource to focus on that business partnering. Many companies are struggling with finance departments being a service provider instead of really truly being a business partner. And the finance function mainly provides the basic accounting and reporting services. They don't have time to focus on the value creating activities such as analyzing the data and guiding the business on critical decisions. And to free up time and achieve greater internal data visibility, the basic core processes need to be lean and effective. When finance department spends more time analyzing the data than gathering it, they truly can become that business partner. How long is your month end taking? It's a question that I ask a lot of people. And how many days would a reforecast take? How long does the board pack take to collate, and does it contain the meaningful information that enables you to actually make those strategic decisions for your business? Now, according to an FSN survey, CFO 2030, Budgeting and Planning, financial reporting is the culprit slowing down other processes such as budgeting, forecasting, and planning, and slowing down the decision-making process within the organization. Half of organizations are still very dependent on spreadsheets to consolidate data. They also use spreadsheets to extract, clean, validate, and make data ready for analyzing and reporting, which is a costly and time-consuming process. Whilst most are spending no more than 30% of their time trying to locate the data, they will then spend 80% of their projected time extracting, cleaning, validating, and simply getting it ready for reporting. The alternative cost of not setting up a scalable process is that the finance function will remain the bottleneck. And instead of empowering slower decision making, it will actually result in less value add to the organization. So it's important to understand the causes and the problems and not just the symptoms. And the finance function is the compass of the organization that monitors and controls its financial performance. So in order not to remain as a value-added service provider, the finance function needs to step forward from the back office to the front line. And if the finance function is kept in a more reactive backseat role, there is a risk that the existing financial processes can't support making business decisions and the growth journey. And as you know, unfortunately, time doesn't stop, data keeps creeping, and forecasts show that we're due to increase by a whopping 61% by 2025, making data management issues worse over the next 3 years. And according to McKinsey's latest reports, Reducing Data Costs Without Jeopardizing Growth, issued back in 2020, many organizations have increased their budgets for data-related transformation initiatives. And although this occurred before the COVID period, according to the FSN latest survey, 59% of organizations did very little to improve their budgeting, forecasting, and planning processes during the period between 2019 and 2021. However, transformation initiatives are recovering in the post-COVID world. As many as 33% of the survey respondents were looking to pick up where they'd left off and make significant changes to their budgeting and forecasting processes, with the remaining 41% seeing a 1 to 2 year delay. Organizations are spending 50% of their time creating, updating, and reworking reports to respond to internal queries, and just a fraction of that time devoted to uncovering insights in that data. And 61% of finance leaders identify inadequate systems and tools as the reason for this problem. When companies start to invest in larger ERP implementations or automating processes, the finance department is typically taken for granted. And consequences include that costly corrections and adaptations for the finance operation to fit in, and a poorly functioning finance department and interruptions in the cash flow. And that all of that could have been avoided by having finance right at the front and the processes in place prepared to support the implementation instead of hindering it. Organizations need their team to be able to focus on FP&A and provide leadership with quick view of their performance and metrics and instant insights to navigate today's complex business world. But at most, the small to medium-sized businesses, only the finance leaders are working on FP&A. They have very limited bandwidth, which means there's not enough time to be strategic. We're trying to alleviate this pain by providing you with a really intuitive, simple to use tool you can share with other business units across that organization. So that's enough of my talking. I'm going to actually hand over to Johnny now to be able to actually show you the solution and walk through how it can alleviate all those issues. Thank you, Johnny.
Brilliant. So hopefully then, just building kind of on what Daniel was saying there, hopefully you can see my screen and actually we can look at the product itself. So like Daniel was saying, we pull all of the transaction line detail from the relevant financial systems. So be that a Sage 200, a Sage 50, or any other financial tool for that matter. We pull all of that in at that transaction line level. And then from that, we can then build up a profit and loss statement, a balance sheet, a trial balance, and a cash flow. What you can see on my screen is just an example of the kind of profit and loss statement that we can have. And very easily, as we just go into Focus, we can then just quickly change the period of time and look at that across kind of any factor. So because we pull in the data at transaction line level, it goes right down to that day level. It means we can select any period of time that we want to look at our profit and loss, our balance sheet, our cash flow statement at. So if, for instance, I want to look at my financial year to date, I can just jump to that period and have a look there. Or if I want to look at current month, previous month, last quarter, if I really wanted to, I could go right down to the day level. I can do that all within Focus. So I'll just jump to, say, my rolling 12-month period there. A whole statement update, and that's now showing me my rolling 12-month period and also comparing that against a previous period. So again, we can compare our data versus the same period last year. We can specify what that previous period looks like. And what we can also do is then look at the variance against that within here. So we can see there that revenue is up by 8.6% versus the same period last year. What we can also do with this data is compare that against budgets. So we can load in budget data, and something that we can actually do in the Phocas product is build these budgets and forecasts out. But when it just comes to analysing the data, we can pull these budgets in, be it from your Sage system, your finance system, be it from an Excel spreadsheet, or be it from within Phocas's budget and forecasting tool. And again, we can compare against the budget and see our performance against there. We can have multiple different budgets in there as well, so we can load in reforecasts and compare those. So again, we can just toggle that in, and we've now got our forecast, our budget, our previous, and our current data in there. What we can also do as well is drill down into each of these categories. So within revenue, I can then break down each level, and then I can see each account code and the relevant detail within there. Now, within finance systems, you're not always going to be just posting against the account code. You might be posting against a particular branch, a particular cost center, or maybe that account sits within a particular department. So what we can do in Phocas is actually drag in and nest in different levels to this data. So let's say, for instance, my organization has numerous branches. I can actually map in branch as a level. And when I look at my P&L structure for the last 12 months versus previous budget and forecast, when I break down revenue, I then have the breakdown by branch. And then within that branch, I then have the detail against those nominals. What I also might have within there is I might have a particular region or country or company. So again, I can nest in numerous levels, cascade down those levels as I'm analysing and looking at where I'm performing well, where I'm not performing well, and just changing my report based on that basis. So if I put company as my top level dimension, I can actually have numerous different companies within here. Look at, say, my operating expenses for company A, for branch 2, and I can go right down to that level and see all of my transactions in there. Now we can go right down to the transaction level within there if we want to. So because we pull in all of that data right down to that GL line level, if I want to look at the transactions behind this 37,000 for repairs and maintenance within company A, within branch 2, I can very simply right click that data and look at the transactions within there. So if there's any data you want to interrogate in a bit more detail or see the detail behind, we can simply pull that in and look at that. So that's over that last 12 months. These are all the transactions that made up that 30-odd thousand pounds. So the beauty of Phocas is that this sits on top of your finance system. So it's simply just reporting on the data that's there, which means we can actually start making changes to how our statements look, how we group the data, all within Phocas, without worrying about it going back into the finance system, corrupting the data, making changes. It means we can be as flexible as we want and actually then build out these reports however we want them to look. So what we can do, if I just go to this statements option at the top left-hand corner, you can actually see there, I've got numerous different versions of my profit and loss. I might have an operational P&L that I share around my senior management. I might have a profit and loss that stays within the finance team, and I might have a KPI report that I send to the board, for instance. So if I jump into my operational P&L, what you'll notice is this structure looks slightly different. So we've got revenue and then sundry revenue broken down, and then we've got cost of goods sold, and we've got all of our different ratios and reports in there. What you'll also notice in here is we've got some non-financial data. So number of customers being a good example, maybe headcount. So there could be data that's sitting, again, not in your finance system, but in an Excel spreadsheet. We can load that data in and actually work in non-financial data into the financial data. So then you can start calculating reports such as average spend per customer, net profit per employee. All of that data we can build in and nest in. So in order to build these statements out, like I said, all of this is actually done on top of the raw data. So it's all done within Phocas without corrupting and going back into the finance system. So we could just access this via our statements feature. And what we can do in here is this is where we can build out new profit and loss, new balance sheet statements, new templates effectively for this data to feed into. So if I jump into my profit and loss statement, it might be that I want to change this format slightly. And I might actually, in this case, want to add in and split out my revenue into revenue and sundry revenue, or revenue for online sales and revenue for retail sales. So what I can do is just add in a new group and then simply just type in sundry revenue, for instance. What I can then do with that is I can then work that into any of my calculations I have in here. So my gross profit at the moment is looking at revenue minus cost of sales. In this case, I just need to add in my sundry revenue, so my gross profit is reflective of that. So it's as simple as just typing in the letters against each one of these groupings, and now we've added that in for us. All of this can be brought in. You can amend this statement however you want. You can add in as simple as just adding in some spaces, adding in a heading, adding in those groups, or actually adding in calculations. What we can also do within these calculations is specify particular account codes. We can reference data that's sitting in our balance sheet. So then we can actually start working across our financial statements and tying in KPIs all within the one profit and loss view. So all of these calculations can be worked in, built in, you build them in once, and the data just feeds in from that finance system on that schedule basis and just populates the data. So when it comes to month end, that data just goes into the format that you want it to go into, and you don't have to waste and spend that time exporting data out, putting it in the right format, putting it into Excel spreadsheets, and then distributing that data for reporting purposes. So if I just jump to this second section within this statements feature, in here, this is where I can then categorize these accounts. So this is where I can say that all of these codes belong to revenue, but I could change those if I wanted to on the fly. I might want to put those into cost of sales for whatever reason. But again, all of that's done on top of the data, so no issue when it comes to actually corrupting any data. This is just simply for the reporting purposes and the analyzing purposes. What we can also do as well on top of the data is actually create new subcategories to the data. A lot of finance systems are limited by how many different kind of groupings that you have for certain data. So within here, we can create as many different categories, subgroupings that we want. So let's just call this subgroup. And in here, this is when we can then create new subcategories, new groupings, all on top of the data. This is where it's really useful as well, is if you've got numerous different systems flowing into this, what you can then do is actually have a one source of the truth for your groupings, despite having different account codes across different systems or different versions or instances of your financial tool. So in here, it's just as simple as grouping, say, my retail sales and cost of sales all into my retail group, and my online sales all into online. What that's going to then do, if I was to just save that and build it, is then give you the options down the left-hand side to then analyze that data, just focus in on maybe online, or maybe bring that in as a level and just have a look at that breakdown. So where it's really useful is when I'm looking at, say, operating expenses, I then have that broken down across marketing, transport costs, donations, or whatever I want to categorize my data for. When it comes as well to then presenting this data back, so this is all well and good for the finance guys to have that statement created, have all the data feeding in, but often it's then the job of finance to distribute that data out, provide reports, provide analysis to other stakeholders in the business. And this is when we can actually bring in that second layer of focus that Daniel talked about, that visualizations, that dashboarding layer. So what this is effectively is, if I just go to an example, this is where we can pull in numerous different KPIs, numerous different reports, all into the one place and actually present this data back. So what we can then do is say, well, maybe I want to have a look at my P&L variance, my trends versus budget, but also some KPIs around my gross profit margin, my cost of sales, and my operating profit. All of that can be brought into one place, and you can just share this dashboard and you can see all of that data. What you can also do is you can filter in within these dashboards. So if I've got numerous companies, numerous branches, numerous cost centers, and I just want to look at my data relevant for company A, I can hit the focus button and my whole dashboard now updates and shows relevant to that selection. Creating these dashboards are really, really easy, completely intuitive and done by the end user. You don't have to rely on Phocas to build these for you. And what we can do within here is just amend the view of the statement. So I'm going into my profit and loss, and I might want to look at that rolling 12 months over, say, the last 12 months and break those months down. What we can then do is we can actually then see that data graphically. So this is revenue and how we're trending over the last 12 months. And we can just reformat that data however we want and however we want to show that within a dashboard. So I might want to look at that cumulatively versus budget versus previous, maybe bring in my forecast as well. And then as easy as just adding to the dashboard, selecting the dashboard we want to see it in, and just putting that on whichever line of the dashboard we want that to sit in. It's not just bar charts and line graphs. You can also incorporate waterfall charts. So again, where this might be quite useful is if we wanted to look at our different branches. So it might be that I actually want to look at my branches side by side and look at the performance of branch 1 versus branch 2 versus 3 and 4 and 5. So what I can do is actually pull these in, and what we say in Phocas is matrix these in. And what this will do is put these alongside of each other. So we've got our total P&L there, and we've also got branch 1, branch 2, branch 3 with all of the relevant detail within there. And again, I can jump to the transactions if I want to. But what we can then do with that is we can again chart that data up, look at that across the branches, or maybe actually we want to look at that maybe in a waterfall chart view and actually look and see how our gross profit this time compares across those 5 branches, color code that in, change the parameters. Do we want it to be against previous or versus budget? And we can just see there how we're performing across the branches. Okay, so very easy to obviously bring in the data. Phocas does all the heavy lifting in terms of exporting that out. Then it's a matter of just creating those statements. However you want to see the data and share that data out, you can do that within the Phocas product, within the grid itself, or within that dashboarding layer. But then what I also want to talk about is the actual budget and forecasting piece in Phocas. So as I mentioned, we can compare against budget and reforecast and compare against forecast, a 6 + 6, a 5 + 7. And all of this forecasting process can be done within Phocas. So Phocas has an additional module for the budget and forecasting. And what we can do in here is actually take this statement layout, whichever one we want, and actually bring that in to a budget template. So just an example of the one that we've got here. We've copied that template. We can nest in the different levels. So if you budget by country or budget by region or budget by cost center, we can nest in those levels. In this case, we've got it by country. So when I break down my revenue, I've got a breakdown across my countries. And then when I go into a particular country, I then have that data broken down. So then when it comes to budgeting, I can actually then go in and then just simply start budgeting. So it could be as simple as just typing in some data. It might be a bit more complex, and you might actually know that over the 12 months, we think we're going to do a particular figure. Maybe we're going to do 1.2 million. And maybe we're going to spread that data evenly across the 12 months. Now we can budget over any time period. It might be that you want to do an 18 months or a 2-year budget. That's absolutely fine. We can accommodate that. But what you also might want to do is actually bring in last year's actuals or 2 years ago's actuals and bring in comparisons against that data. So what we can do is actually bring in the actuals that we're already pulling into that financial product and actually then start comparing against last year's actuals, for instance, maybe versus a pre-COVID year, or maybe against last year's budget. And we can actually see how our figures compare when we're actually going in and entering this data. What we can also do with that data is then that might provide some weighting to our data. So it might be that December tends to be a quieter month. We tend to have a drop off in the summer, but March is really busy. What that means is when we type in that 1.2 million figure, we can then spread that based on the seasonality, based on the weighting of a pre-COVID year or last year's actuals or last year's budget. So we can just spread that data, and then now we can see March is a lot busier. We tend to drop off in April, but May picks up again, and then June's a lot busier. So we can accommodate all of that. But the main kind of benefit of this budgeting tool is actually taking away that responsibility on one or two people within the organization and actually giving accountability to other people in the business. So it might be that within finance, I have no idea what we're going to do in terms of sales accruals, but that might sit better with my sales manager. So the great thing about this product is that we can then assign these lines out to different people in the business. So we might want to assign that to, say, Adam or Andy or to Bill. So I can just assign that over to Bill, and that will now sit in Bill's queue. And all Bill needs to do is go in, input the data that he has, assign it back to myself, and then I have the ultimate authority to accept or reject those changes depending on what he's entered. From that, we get a full workflow history of who's been assigned that account, when was it assigned, what happened to that. We can add comments to the data, like we've got one there, and we can do that right down to cell level. So we can look at a cell history, see how that's changed over time, and also if there's any comments against that. So we can see there Adam's questioning that data. So that goes right down to every single nominal that you want to budget by. So if I go into maybe operating expenses, I then have all of that detail. And it could be that some codes you might just want to take whatever the data was last year and just uplift that by a certain percent, maybe just uplift actuals from last year by 7.5%. So we can bulk apply those rules to all of that data. There's other things that we can do with the data. We can calculate off it, very familiar to Excel users. We can add in calculations. These calculations may be based on numerous different things. So it might be that we actually want to go down to our training costs, and actually training costs might be based on our cost per employee of training and the number of employees that we have. So again, we can just factor in that calculation and then just input the data as we go through. So maybe the cost of training is going to go up in February. We can then just factor that data in and apply general rules to that data. What we can also do is tie in assumptions. So it might be that interest rates are going up or inflation's dropping or rising, and that might have a knock-on impact to your budget. So what we can do is, again, have a tab similar to this, where we've got inflation figures, and any of our nominals that are tied to inflation, we can just work in a calculation. And if inflation was to drop to, say, 8% in March, what that'll then do is pull through into our main tab and drive those different nominals that are based on that figure. What that means that you can do is actually then start scenario planning with this data and playing about with it. So what happens in a pessimistic view if inflation was to go through the roof, or what would happen optimistically if interest rates were to kind of bottom out and things were back to normal, so to speak. Once you've obviously created the budget, or once you're through that process, the main benefit here is that we can actually then publish that data back into that financial statements database. So it's just a matter of hitting this publish button, creating either a new stream or publishing over the top of our existing budgets, and just pushing that into the financial statements database for us to then start analyzing against. Because you can create as many different, what we call streams or different versions of the budget, it means you can have one budget workbook, but then create an optimistic budget, a pessimistic budget, just by changing some of these assumptions around. There's other elements to this budget. We can also budget by headcount. So we can lock this out via a password, but then we can start inputting different users, different employees in the business, inputting their salaries, inputting if they get an adjustment and their salary is going to rise or drop, or we're going to terminate their contracts, bring in all the other drivers that and other costs that employees bring with them. So if they've got a company car or a mobile phone, which are driving other nominals, all of that data you can factor into this headcount data, and again, just drive that main budget and impact the overall forecast from there. And then obviously, now we've got our budgets, we've got our actuals coming in from our finance system, we can then start reforecasting the data as we go throughout the year. So it might be that you want to do that quarterly, it might be that you do it monthly, it might be that you do it half year. It really doesn't matter, because what we can then do is just bring in and start reforecasting on the back of actuals and what we've originally budgeted. And then again, cascade down those levels, allocate those out to the different people if we need to, but then start putting in some rules around the forecast. So maybe our forecast is we're going to snap that data back to budget. Maybe we're going to follow the actuals. We've had a trend, we're up 5%. We want to follow that on and impact that data. So all of that can be done within the forecast. And again, we can just hit the publish button and push that back in and allow us to then start comparing that data in the financial statements database, pulling that through into the dashboarding level and allowing for that analysis, the sharing of data to all be done within the one platform. Okay, so that does bring us kind of to the end of the demo. I'm not sure if we've got any questions, Richard, at all.
Brilliant. Thanks ever so much for that. Yeah, we've got a couple of questions that have come in. Obviously, if anybody else has got any questions, feel free to pop them in the chat or raise your digital hand and we can unmute you. So I assume this is possible, but I don't know if you want to clarify. It's possible to export and share the information. How does that look and how does that work?
Yeah, absolutely. So I guess from a sharing point of view, what we always say in Phocas is, in an ideal world, we'd love it that you stayed in the Phocas product and utilized the dashboard, utilized the different the grid itself, and actually share the data within there. And the great thing about the Phocas product is, because it's on a per user license basis, it means you can set up different users that have different access. So when we do that, we can just share a dashboard out to the marketing team, and we can then just when they jump into that particular dashboard, they only see what's relevant to them. Or if I can only see company A, I can only see that data. What we can also do when we want to share data out is, at any time when we're in this grid, is we can just hit this export button at the top. So what we can do is just export that out to Excel. What's great when we export to Excel is that it will actually keep the calculations in there. So our gross profit is revenue minus cost of sales. Those calculations will be in the export. So if I made a change in my Excel spreadsheet to revenue, it would pull through into the gross profit and the margin and the net profit and the variances in there. Or what we can also do is export to PDF. So again, mirror the view that we've got, but in a kind of nice PDF format that you may want to print and share around the business.
Brilliant.
From there.
And I think this probably leads on actually from what you've just said and what you've just shown here and what you showed previously in the session. But obviously another question was, can I limit how much information different users see? So, one example that we were asked about is limiting, the detail of the P&L. It may be that some people just want a top level and other people want to drill into the actual data and the detail behind that. And that's possible, is it?
Yeah, absolutely. So we've got numerous different options around sharing the data. So like I said, because we pull in the data right down to that transaction level, and we've got the data by account code, by region, by company, we can then restrict users to just seeing particular accounts, just seeing particular regions, just their department, just their cost center. But then what we can also do is just restrict users to just seeing a dashboard or just seeing a particular profit and loss statement, but can't see, let's say, the balance sheet or the cash flow. And what we can also do is we can restrict users down to not being able to jump to that transaction line level detail. So they can see absolutely everything, but it could be that you don't want them to go down to looking at the transactions, or it could be that you want them to go right down to every single transaction apart from, let's say, the wages and the salaries transactions or particular payroll costs. So you can restrict, again, right down to that level. So anything you see here that we've done and analyzed by, you can restrict that right down within Phocas.
Okay, and obviously EBS, we do a lot with Sage 200. We do Sage 50 as well. You've mentioned multiple companies. In my mind, that is multiple companies within Sage 200. But can this work with different applications, different ERP solutions, and can you merge them all together into one, to give one group view?
Yeah, absolutely. So again, a really good benefit of the product is the kind of consolidation piece within Phocas. So it might be that you've got one entity that's sitting on a Sage 50 and one entity that's sitting on a Sage 200, and maybe you've got, you know, a subsidiary that's running on 0, for instance. So what Phocas can do is pull in all of that data. Again, we're data agnostic, so we can pull in that from numerous different systems and different tools, pull it all within to Phocas, and then that statements feature where we can do that mapping and say that these codes belong to this particular department. All of that can be done within Phocas. So it saves you having uniformity across your numerous different systems and trying to align them. I know a lot of different tools restrict how many different departments, how many different kind of subcategories you can have and what the codes look like. So within Phocas, we can handle all of that and pull all of that in there and allow for that clean, consolidated view, but then also to have the ability to break down into the individual company or instance.
Brilliant. Okay, great stuff. And a final question, which I think I know the answer to this one as well, but can this be used for sales analysis? Because obviously you've shown a lot around the financial side of it, but you know, stock and sales orders and you know, gross profit and all of that side of things.
Yeah, no, absolutely. So yeah, short answer to the question is yes. We've actually got a webinar coming up, don't we, on the sales analysis front?
We do. That's why I knew the answer to this one. So 20th of June is our next webinar, which is where I think you're going to show exactly that, isn't it, in how that, you know, that side of things can be used.
Yeah, absolutely. And the great thing about that is, and actually while I'm here, is we can then tie that data into our budget and forecasting as well. So then we can actually tie in when we're talking about sales data, maybe by customer or product group, and actually have that data drive maybe some of those nominals as well. So in this example, I've actually got a breakdown of all of my customers within the UK, and all of that data is actually driving my nominal data. So you can really start kind of having that full FP&A solution to actually do kind of, you know, everything in one, so to speak. Okay.
Brilliant stuff. Yeah, I've not seen any other questions come in. They're all the ones that I've had. Obviously, if anybody goes away from this session and thinks of something they should have asked, feel free, obviously, to contact us here at EBS, and you know, we'll be happy to get the answers over to you. Likewise, Phocas, I'm sure you'll be prepared to do more, you know, personal one-to-one demos as well, if you know, of interest, drilling into particular areas. I think probably worth obviously just reminding people of that date. You know, 20th of June is when we've got the next session, which is on the sales analysis and the analytical side of it. Worth mentioning also another date for diaries at 12th of July. So EBS are running our own event, which is going to be at Moore Hall near EBS, as you know, near EBS's offices in Birmingham. And Phocas, you're going to be there, I understand, and are going to be launching some new dashboards as a little bit of a teaser there. So I won't say any more. So yeah, obviously we'll be sending out invites for that event in hopefully next week. So yeah, keep an eye on your inbox for that. If I've hopefully not forgotten anything or missed anything, but obviously if there is anything else, feel free to contact us, or somebody can shout up now. But if not, thank you very much, Phocas. Thank you everybody for joining, and this will be put up on our YouTube channel in hopefully within the next few hours. And yeah, look forward to speaking to everybody about it soon.
Thank you, Richard. I was just going to mention as well that we have the Try Phocas option today for all EBS customers and prospects, where you've got the ability to have a 2-week, no obligation, no cost trial of our solution of financial statements using a cut of your data, so you can really see it in action.
Brilliant. I knew I'd forget something. Thank you, Daniel.
No worries.
Brilliant. We'll leave that on the screen for a few minutes. But yeah, thank you, everybody. And yeah, hopefully you can join us on our next webinar.
Thank you all. Speak to you soon.